Tonight on Point Blank, my guest is Dr. Philip Abradu Otu. He's the Director of Research at the Bank of Ghana. Doc, you're welcome to Eyewitness News.
Thank you very much.
How are you?
Not too bad.
Not too bad. Yeah, you're looking very good. Yeah, you don't look like the CD, so you're fine. You're fine.
Yes.
I was before going off saying that if the Bank of Ghana is having problems with money, then me, if I'm poor, it's not a problem. But let's summarize. What is the problem? What is this issue about a 60 billion CD loss that the BoG has made? Can you explain the matters to us?
So let's track back a year, 2 years ago. The central bank was making profits. I think if you look at the statement that was just released, last year we made a profit of about 1.2 billion. This year it's totally reversed and it's gone to a loss of 60.8 billion. Why?
Before you even go to the loss,
yes.
When they say BoG makes a profit, how do you make profit? Where do you make your profit from?
So we also have income.
Okay, so where is the income from? You do IGF? What do you do?
Yeah, so the BoG is in the possession of some Government of Ghana securities. We do transactions for Government of Ghana. We charge fees. We are also in the business of lending to the banks in the overnight market. So we charge them when they all come for these overnight loans.
So they pay with interest?
They pay with interest.
So then you post
and
a profit?
Interest, yes, it's at the policy rate.
I see.
So we pay some profit. So on the income side, there are specific line items that bring in income to the bank.
And last year your profit was what?
1.2 billion.
The previous year, do you remember?
The previous year it was also a profit item.
So in the past,
yes.
Have we ever seen a BoG record a loss? Do you recall?
I don't recollect.
So this would be the first time we are recording a loss.
The massive loss.
That's a big deal. And why?
A big deal. Well, so the reason is primarily due to the domestic debt exchange. Just as the banks suffered losses on their holdings of Government of Ghana instruments, the BoG also suffered a loss on its holdings of Government of Ghana instruments. The holdings of our instruments are classified into two distinct types of instruments. We have what we call the marketable instruments, and then we have those that we call the non-marketable. The marketable instruments, Bank of Ghana can pick those instruments, go to the secondary market, and trade those instruments for cash. For the non-marketable instruments, you can't do that. The non-marketable instruments are things like the COVID bond. The non-marketable instruments are things like certain tall bonds that we are holding in our portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
The non-marketable are things like, let's say, Telecom Malaysia bonds. There was a Telecom Malaysia deal with Ghana Telecom. The deal went bad along the line. We had to step in. There was a bond that was issued just to make the transaction go smooth at that time. Now, these non-marketable instruments, they date as far back as 1992. Legacy bonds that we are holding on our books. If you put the marketable instruments plus the non-marketable instruments, the impact on the domestic debt exchange coming from the domestic debt exchange, we incurred a loss on just these two items alone to the tune of 48.1 billion Ghana cedis. These are two items. The third is Cocoa Board. We also had some loans to Cocoa Board which were impaired as a result of the domestic debt exchange. In the discussions that preceded the domestic debt exchange with the IMF, it was decided that Cocoa Board's debt to BoG be also restructured. So we suffered a loss from there. If you put the 48 together with the Cocoa Board, it put us somewhere close to 51.3 billion Ghana cedis. This was the loss that we incurred from just these three items alone. It's a domestic debt exchange impact that has swung our balance sheet into negative territories.
51 billion, but
yes.
With the reports from the Auditor General is 60 billion, 60.8. So where is the...
So I've only talked about the biggest items.
Okay.
Three giving us close to
51.
53.1.
Okay.
Sorry. So we have about 7 to go.
And where is that from?
Of course, we have a little from exchange rate movements impact on our balance sheet because of the liability, some of the liability items on our balance sheet. That alone was about some 5 billion. If you add, we are almost there.
Okay. Explain this to me. When the haircut came from the government, we were told it was touching individual bondholders. The government was begging pensioners to join. They said, but they won't do it. So they were taking off. Now there's a discussion around pension funds. So this is going to affect people. So if you had money that you were supposed to have mature in a year, you're going to rather wait for 5 years or 7 years or 15 years. It was affecting individuals. Now, there's another part where financial institutions were supposed to be affected. How does the central bank, the bank of all banks, also suffer a haircut? That is what I'm not understanding.
So when you look at what has happened to BoG and what has happened to the rest of the economy, the banks and then individuals, they did not suffer a haircut. They had their instruments restructured.
Yeah.
We had two different types of instruments. Remember, I started off with saying that we have the marketable, which can be traded, and then we have the non-marketable. For the marketable, the treatment that was given to Bank of Ghana was similar to what was done with the banks and the individuals and the rest of the economy.
So that's futuristic. That's pushing it forward into the future.
So that one was pushed forward. The interest rate was
slashed.
Okay. As to whether you call an interest rate slashing a haircut, that's also a different matter. But I think haircut connotes to the principal. So
haircut is haircut. If you reduce my money, reduce it. Whether it's whether you shave my ankle or my head, whatever, my beard, it's still haircut. But you proceed.
So on that marketable, if the treatment was just like the banks had, when we got to the non-marketable, that is where the haircut happened. That is where the principal was slashed. Our total holdings there was 64.5 billion. And it was slashed to 32.
Explain this again to me. Are you not the one who holds all our monies for us? Now, when the government is holding monies for people who have bonds, and government says, I would only pay you half, or I would give it to you, you either take half now, or you wait for 7 years or 15 years to collect everything that you really was due you. How does it apply to BoG too? Do you have any money with any government somewhere that you're also going to take, and government says, no, these are the two offers I'm putting on the table for you? Explain that again for a simple person.
Could you also come again?
Good. When the haircut came, there were offers that were made to people.
Yes.
You could take your principal now.
Yes.
And you may incur some loss or some losses, correct?
Correct.
Or you would let the bond, and government made us understand that it is better for you to accept the DDE that it was offering. It was the safest thing for you to do. And I'm saying that is because I'm dealing with a financial institution.
Yeah.
But you are BoG. Who do you deal with to the extent that you are also having to suffer this?
No, we deal with the government. So government is the principal person we are dealing with in all of this. But Bank of Ghana had to act as a shock absorber to the entire domestic debt exchange program, which was designed to ensure we get to sustainable debt levels. So look at it this way. Bank of Ghana was the residual. All others had a different treatment. Bank of Ghana had to come in to save the situation, to ensure that our overall debt levels get to sustainable levels. So we acted as a residual. And for that residue to be consistent with the entire debt program, we needed to take that haircut on that instrument, which was the non-marketable.
Were you not the ones who the government said were going to be on standby to support any bank that's going to suffer as a result of the domestic debt exchange program? The BoG was supposed to be on standby. You had a standby instrument that you were using to bail out these banks.
I'm sure you're talking about the Financial Sector Stability Fund, the FSSF.
Yeah. So if you were supposed to be on standby to support the banking institutions, and now you are taking a hit yourself, how does that affect the banks that deal with you?
Well, see, the central bank is an institution of public policy. Don't look at the central bank like the commercial banks. This is an institution of public policy. That is a liquidity problem. The banks always come to the central bank for liquidity to support their operations. We've been doing that consistently since the beginning of the year.
Okay.
And because of the domestic debt exchange, government decided to set up a financial sector stability fund. And that financial sector stability fund was supposed to receive support from the World Bank, from the government itself, and from some of our development partners. And as we speak, they are working out governance arrangements and structures on how to deliver this particular resource to the banking industry with oversight from the central bank.
This 60 billion loss,
Yes.
is it going to be recorded as a bad debt or you're going to recover it?
Well, so this 60 billion, we will need to recover this 60 billion.
What are the processes to recover?
The first is that the central bank will have to retain its profits. Remember, somewhere in the law, it says that when the central bank makes profit, we need to turn that profit over to our main shareholder, which is government. So we are now going to strictly ensure that we retain all our profits in the Bank of Ghana. One other problem that also created this situation was the fact that we need now to move towards optimizing the returns from our portfolio. We manage our funds ourselves at the Bank of Ghana, and we need to ensure that we get a lot of returns. But I think above all, we need to ensure that we get capitalized as we move along the process. Those talks have started with government, and along the line, we expect some capitalization to be done. If you look at the balance, the results that were released, our stated capital is 10 million. The last time the central bank was capitalized, this was way back in the 60s or 70s, if I recollect. We've never had any injection of capital from our main shareholder, which is government, to keep the bank running. That is top on the agenda. That will have to be done to bring the bank back up. You recall, just a few days ago, the Bank of England is making a claim on government. The Bank of England is saying, I have made a loss. And the Bank of England says that loss belongs to government. It's 150 billion. The government will have to reimburse the central bank, else there are going to be issues. So in the same way, we also expect some capitalization from the central bank.
For the central bank, not from...
No, we expect some capitalization from government.
For the central bank.
For the central bank.
Good.
Yes.
But that's a big one to ask, because let me use the word helpless. This government is helpless. And I'm not using government to refer to the current government, but the government is helpless. You are asking that same helpless government to capitalize you. How is that going to work?
So I use the term medium term. Government is currently on an IMF program. That program is to ensure that healthy primary balances are generated as we move throughout the course of the program, which is a 3-year program. We expect that over the medium term, in about 5, 6, 7 years' time, government would have made a lot of reserves to be able to use some of those reserves to capitalize the central bank.
So this 60 billion, we should not expect the recovery to happen anytime soon.
We will be working to recover.
Do we have a period by which we are hopeful? And I'm using we to mean I'm also part of BoG. Do we have a period by which
Well, again, I use the term medium term. Over the medium term, 5, 6, 7 years, we hope that this situation would have reversed.
But what does a loss of 60 billion cedis mean to the operations of the central bank?
So the issue...
The practical problems that would arise as a result of this loss that has been posted.
So you are raising the issue of policy solvency. And the question is whether the central bank will be able to continue to deliver on its mandate.
Can you?
of inflation and also deliver on price stability? Yes, we can. Why? Yes, we can because, look, since the beginning of the year, you realize that inflation has been declining steadily. If you look at the non-food component of inflation, it has eased significantly. So we are still carrying on with our mandate of fighting inflation. We have the tools to use to
Inflation
fight.
has been fluctuating.
Well, if you look at the headline, but if you look at non-food, if you look at the non-food component, where monetary policy matters most, not the food side, you can see a healthy deceleration in the rate of inflation, which is good news, and we hope this will continue. So we will continue to discharge our function and our mandate effectively despite the loss.
There's a question around the impact on the Bank of Ghana's prestige and authority. Would this not affect and have an influence on the macroeconomic development?
Well, that is why we need to quickly show the markets that we are recovering and that we will recover. If this negative profit stays on our books for a very long time, it brings in credibility issues.
So the credibility thing.
The credibility issues are there. And that is why we need to work hard to restore back to positive territories this negative equity.
And you're even looking at that for medium terms, at least 5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, which moral authority would you have to and you are a supervisor in the industry.
Yes.
You have been talking about recapitalization of banks. You have been holding a big cane over all the banks. Yeah. Your morale would be dampened by this, wouldn't it? And that would make nonsense of everything you're doing in the banking sector.
And
as
that is why we have a plan. That is why we have a
strategy. But your plan is iffy, isn't it? Your plan is on the government to capitalize you, which government itself is being capitalized by the
Remember,
IMF.
part of the problem was monetary financing. There was a monetary financing issue in there of about 37.9 billion.
Yes.
Okay. That also formed part of the debt, which went under restructuring. Will we continue to monetary finance? No. So there's going to be a huge positive externality being generated to the balance sheet of Bank of Ghana alone from stopping the monetary financing of government. It's huge. It was huge in the mix.
Is this loss going to be a one-off because the DDA has happened? Is it a one-off thing, or we should expect if the Auditor General went into your books next year, we would see something similar coming up?
No, it's a one-off event that has happened. It's a one-off domestic debt shock that came from government. I think the question you should be asking is government also bringing on board another domestic debt exchange program?
No, my question is rather to me.
In the foreseeable future.
So my question is, if it remains as it is,
yes,
with the government's domestic debt exchange program, we are not going to see a repetition of this or a worsening of this next year.
No, we won't.
Unless government surprises you again, you are fine, you are stable.
Well, next year we should see some recovery, and you wouldn't be seeing this huge hole sitting on our books.
You'll be seeing a recovery, but not of all the 60 billion.
No, of all the 60. If I told you today here around this table that we are recovering 60 billion next year, no.
You're lying to me.
It won't happen.
But you can stagger it.
Yes, but there's a plan to stagger and recover.
Let me ask a layman question. Why don't you just print money to take care of that?
No, you can't do that.
Why?
It will have adverse consequences on
inflation,
economy, and we don't want to do that.
There are schools of thought that suggest that when you have challenges with the payment of arrears to contractors and all of this, and government is hard pressed with cash, simply print money and solve that problem. It does not work, you think?
Well, that's the government side.
Okay.
Paying its contractors.
Yes.
Doesn't have the money.
Asking you to produce.
Asking us to produce, it has an impact. It will have an impact.
So if you were to print 60 billion to fix yourself short term, the impact would be on what? Inflation?
Of course, the impact will be on inflation.
So that's out of the
It's
question.
out of the question. It's out of the question. It's out of the question. We need to generate the resources from within.
Through the same procedure that you generated it over the period.
Yes.
It has to be organic.
It has to be organic.
You cannot
No,
artificially fix this.
It has to be organic. Else we'll be chasing, virtually chasing something wrong, you know.
Let me ask another
yes.
question. Can you take a loan to fix yourself?
From where? No, we won't do that. The central bank won't do that.
Is that an option you can deploy? Is that an option available to you? Say, we are in a quick fix. Let's go and take a loan somewhere.
Taking a loan, doing it organically, I'll opt to do it organically.
It's the same. Okay, so
Yes,
for you,
yes.
you want to go that way.
Yes, I'll go that way.
How are the markets reacting to this? Usually when things like this happen, the markets will react in a way, and a lot of the time it's negative. What has been the response since this news came up?
Well, since this news came up, I don't think the markets have responded adversely. The key indicator you should be watching is probably your exchange rate. The exchange rate has continued to remain very stable. That is where all the sentiments feed into. We haven't seen that. We haven't seen that because I think the markets have internalized the fact that what is happening to BoG is not peculiar to BoG, but other central banks are also suffering the same fate. The Bank of England is suffering the same fate. The Bank of England is making a claim of 150 billion for the losses that they incurred on.
So it's a global problem.
It's a global problem.
Except that the Bank of England is not spending 131 million cedis on motor vehicle maintenance. The Bank of England is not spending on domestic and foreign travel 97 million cedis, which is 300% increase from 2021 in just 2022. So you are being reckless as an institution, and that's what has led us here. Not necessarily the domestic debt may be a problem, but
don't use the word reckless.
I withdraw reckless. You have been poor in you have been poor in managing.
Withdraw.
You have been poor in managing yourselves.
We can say policy has been suboptimal. We can put it that way.
Say that in English.
Suboptimal policy means that policy has not been
reckless.
Not reckless. I wouldn't like to use reckless, but let's use suboptimal. Okay. Suboptimal in the sense that we chose a course of action to save the economy from total collapse, and that, as a result of the DDE, has landed us into.
So the DDE is part of your problems.
But let me address the fuel thing.
Yes.
The fuel thing is part. The problem is one of the price of crude oil, which rose significantly between 2021 and 2022. It moved from 70. I think it peaked somewhere around 120, and then it dropped to like 100. In 2022, we paid a lot for petrol and diesel. Petrol alone was 5 Ghana cedi a liter, and it shot up significantly to about 11, 12.
It went to beyond 20, I think.
Yeah, well, that was the diesel. The diesel one went very high to 20. That jump was very astronomical. The BoG, like any other institution, buys petrol and diesel in the market like anybody else. We suffered that same fate. And the vehicle maintenance lines that we have in our balance sheet includes fuel. It includes insurance that we pay on the vehicle. It includes licensing of the vehicles that we have, and it includes repairs and maintenance. The fuel is the biggest item. It's about 90% of that expenditure line, fuel and maintenance. If you look at the trend since 2019, it's been at 90%. Last year, it jumped to about 94%.
So last year was a peculiar
year was a peculiar year. And the crude oil is part of the story.
Okay.
So anytime we are explaining these things, we need to bring the world economy.
That's why you are doing good for oil, but we don't have time to discuss that. I would have asked you how that's doing. There's one last question I have to ask you before we leave. IMF brought you a class prefect to be supervising you. He's called Leonard Chumo. He's IMF's resident financial advisor to the Bank of Ghana. Is he still around?
No, it was a resident advisor to the Banking Supervision Department, not to Bank of Ghana.
Oh, so the publications...
Yeah, the publication got it wrong. The publication got it
So,
wrong.
but he's with the banking supervision
Yes,
division.
he's with the banking supervision. And let me tell you what he's doing. What the advisor is doing is trying to help banking supervision department help the banks transition into a new Basel regime. The Basel is a framework for supervision.
Okay.
And that is what he came in for.
But the irony is,
And these resident TAs are commonplace in Bank of Ghana. He's not the first.
when was the last time you had one?
My mind is the last time we had one resident TA, we had one for the financial markets department. Yes.
Do you remember
Financial-
which year?
No, I remember the year. I think he left in 2018.
2018. But do you remember when he came?
I don't recollect. I
Okay.
don't recollect.
Very
I
well.
don't recollect.
We need to leave it here for now. Thank you so much. Unless there's something you want to say to Ghanaians to assure them that their CD producer and CD printer is not going to collapse.
Well, my last word is that what we are seeing on the balance sheet of the Bank of Ghana is not as a result of reckless policy. It's not as a result of bad decisions that were made from Bank of Ghana, but this is the direct impact of the domestic debt exchange on our balance sheet. It's purely a fiscal problem. It's purely a debt problem, which had to be restructured to put the country on sustainable debt levels. Its impact has gone through the other sectors of the economy.
So this is your share.
This is Bank of Ghana's impact that we are seeing.
Are we safe?
And there are corrective measures in the line. Next year we'll be sitting here talking about the changes that we've seen in the balance sheet.
Are we safe?
We are very safe. Be safe. Carry on with your business as normal. All is safe.
Thank you so much, Doc, for your time on Point Blank.
Thank you very much.